Charlie Fox.
There's a Sierra Zulu something. Sierra Zulu station. Come back.
Whiskey Alpha 9, Sierra Zulu Mike.
Sierra Zulu Mike, give me the front part of that, please.
Whiskey Alpha 9, Sierra Zulu Mike. Name is Mark, just outside of Chicago.
Okay, we are in QSO, folks. We are in QSO with Whiskey Alpha 9, Sierra Zulu Mike. And it's Mark. And what's your location, Mark?
Location is Brookfield, Illinois, just outside of Chicago, about 12 miles west of Chicago. And you are banging in here 20 over 9. And I've been reading the mail on you about the audio checks, and I got a question about compression when you were suggesting it to that previous contact.
Okay, Mark, go ahead. Fire away.
Okay, first off, what's my signal doing? Are you in Miami? And I didn't catch your name, sir. I'm sorry.
No, we're in just beside Louisville, Kentucky. We're on the Indiana side of the mighty Ohio, right at Louisville, Kentucky. The name is Jim Juliet India Mike. I'm copying you on two 10-foot mag loop antennas. One is aimed east and west, and the other is aimed north and south. And right now I'm running in the co-phase mode, and I am picking you up about 4 dB hotter than on any one of those mag loops by itself. So go ahead with your question on compression, I guess it was.
Okay, so this is a new radio for me. It's a 75602 that I just acquired recently, and I'm trying to get the audio set up correctly. You were suggesting setting compression to 3 to the other gentleman. Was that something specific for that radio, or was that in dB? I've got my compressor on right now, only maybe 5 to not even 10 dB of compression, but the 756s seem to kind of slam that ALC up to maximum, it seems like, and somehow I just don't think that's right, although they seem to have a reputation for being a little stingy with their ALC. What could you tell me?
What I'm really saying there is that you're running 30% of your compression possibilities. In other words, if your compressor is at 0 to 100 input level, run it at 30. If it's a 0 to 10, run it at 3. So it's a 1/3 possibilities of your compressor capability. Roger?
Okay, well, I have no other reference other than running a specific amount of decibel maximum for the compressor on that. But how does this rig sound? I've had plenty of signal reports that say it sounds pretty good, and most people are saying they can't really hear a difference in compression when I turn it on and off, which I guess that's a good thing. And others are saying for sure just leave it on because the 756s are a little stingy otherwise. Go ahead.
Roger, what's the nomenclature regarding the input to your compressor? Is it in dB or numbers, or what is it?
Yeah, there's no reference as far as any number on it, of the...
Standby frequency in use.
Simply adjusted for, well, actually, ICOM is recommending 10 to 15 dB of compression, which, boy, when I do that, it slams the maximum on the ALC, and but when I turn the mic gain down for to bring that ALC down, it doesn't even show any compression.
Okay, you're getting ready to fade out. I would say if if you have a rotary control that governs the amount of compression that you feed your compressor, I would put it on 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, somewhere in there. if you have a rotary control that governs the amount of compression that you signal that you feed your compressor, I would do a 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. If you have numbers, I would do it, if it's a 0 to 10, I'd put it on 3. If it's a 0 to 100, I'd put it on 30. About a third of the capabilities of that compressor. Roger?
Okay, real good. Well, that's actually about where I've got it right now, so I think I'm probably doing okay. I've got the compression at, as far as the rotary control, on about 9:30, not quite 10 o'clock, and it's given me about 5 to 8 dB of compression. So, and if I take it easy, I'm able to keep it in the ALC range. Well, how does it sound?
Well, it sounds good, but it's not fat as it could be. What I'm saying is, you want to come up to 10, at least 10. I mean, 9:30 is nice, but 10's better. So come up to 10 o'clock on your input to your compressor. Then go to your ALC with your mic gain in hand and adjust your ALC level to where it's deflecting mid-scale to 2/3. By adjusting your mic level, adjust your ALC for operation mid-scale to 2/3. Roger?
Roger, okay, very good. And we'll let you carry on with the other stations that want to get you. So very good. You're 15 to 20 dB here in Chicago. I'm just running here for 10 feet off the ground. So anyway, thank you, Jim. KC9VKV WA9SZM on your final.
Roger, Roger. And what was the name there again?
Name is Mark, Label Romeo Kilo.
Roger, Mark. I finally went to Milford PA SDR, and I'm copying you there at about 8 dB above their noise level, so it sounds good. And the whole idea is to get your audio level to have about a 3 dB dynamic range. And to explain what dynamic range is the difference between the softest part of your audio and the loudest part of your audio, and it's indexed by calling it a dynamic range in decibels. And normally unprocessed audio has a 10 dB dynamic range. If you interpolate that to modulation, and you're not running any processing on your audio, you will have a 10 dB dynamic range with an average percent of peak modulation of 30%. And that means, that you're obviously hitting 100% sometimes, but we're talking about average percent of peak modulation will be 30%. So what we want to do is fatten that up. And I've found that a 3 dB dynamic range that you achieve through a slight amount of compression and running your ALC at mid-scale to 2/3 will give you that 3 dB dynamic range. And with that 3 dB dynamic range, your average percent of peak modulation comes up to between 80 and 85%. So you will sound approximately twice as loud as what you did before, but that setup is with a lot of finesse. And you will not hear a compressor sucking up. You will not hear a limiter limiting, but you will have a fat signal.
QSL, Jim, very good. And your signal's starting to fade, so we'll let you go, especially if you have a mag loop. But one last question about 10 dB of compression. If I'm watching the meter, would that be about right?
I just say a third of the capability of your compressor. I hate to say specifically, but you'll have to be the judge of that. As far as your volume level, I would say at least an input of 10 o'clock at least. Roger, 10 to 10:30 would be probably 10 o'clock would do fine.
Fine. Got it. Thank you very much. Back up to 20 over. So very good, Jim. I know there's guys calling you, so and I do have the info on your YouTube page. So thank you very much.
Roger, Roger. What's the name there again, please?
Mark, Mexico, Kilo.
Roger, Mark. 3 Z-Way, sir. You have a great a great weekend, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing here. I just lost my big screen. Come on! I think it was humanoidal era. Anyway, Mark-III Z-Wave, sir, and we should have this uploaded to YouTube in the next couple of days. So if you go to YouTube and do a call letter search for Kilo Charlie 9 Victor Kilo Victor, that will take you to our QSO-VLOg page, and you'll be looking for a QSO entitled My Group Air Check 10419. My Group Air Check 10419. So 3's Mark, and we'll catch you later. Have a great week, and join us the next Friday if you get a chance. This is Kilo Charlie 9 Victor Kilo Victor and the QSO-VLOg network for Friday afternoon. We go from 3:30 till 5 and record the whole time. If you have a radio you want to check out the audio, give us a shout. This is KC9VKV.